terrific not-for-profit organization. They've done work in parks and in public spaces throughout the world. And our thought was that if we move forward with this, we may want to consider as part of a budget hiring the professional planning services of an organization like this to help us throughout this process. Next slide, please. So what's next? These are action items. Okay, so the Commission will obviously need to review and approve the RFP, RFQ if it desires to do so. We can put together a budget that the Commission would have to approve for implementation of the plan. It would include advertising costs, printing costs. We'll get a proposal from planning consultant. Our thought was, if we get a proposal from planning consultants that the Commission finds acceptable, we could put them on, pay them until the point where we have chosen the successful bidder. Once we choose a successful bidder, there's still a tremendous amount of work to do. In fact, most of the work to do. At that point, what we would tell the successful bidder is that the services of the outside planning consultant would be part of its secret costs. So this way, once we select our successful bidder, the cost of the planner will come off the Commission, and we can pass it on to the successful bidder, and yet continue to be able to use the services of paid professional planning consultant. We would then, if it was approved by the Commission, would retain the services of the consultant, distribute the RFP, RFQ, have our site visit, receive and review the submissions, discuss them with the planning consultant, try to winnow them down and submit them to the Park Commission. That's where I say recommendation of finalists to the Park Commission. And then, if the Park Commission chose, it could have public presentations of the however 2, 3, 5, 6 presenters or bidders that you choose to. Then the Commission would select the successful bidder. At that point, the successful bidder is now on the hook to pay for PPS's services. You're then at a point where if we really want to make this happen, we need to get the support and conduct significant public outreach and meetings with stakeholders, with neighbors, with anybody and everybody who has a desire to have some input on how this is going to move forward. And PPS is qualified to carry on a charrette process, which they do, and I've seen them do this.
What's a charrette process?
It's a process where you have meetings and you open them up to the public, and you put out copies of your plans, and you just discuss planning principles and ideas with stakeholders and people who want to come, and you get their input, and you try to use that input to help you design what comes next, which is you negotiate your concession agreement. So now you've gotten the idea from the bidder, you've gone out to the public, you've gotten their ideas, you try to integrate the two to see if you can reach a happy medium. PPS is there to protect the public. They're not affiliated with any government, they're not for profit. This is what they do. So, hopefully they will short circuit comments from the public, and they will be able to act as a conduit between the public and the private entity and the Commission.
Did you do this process even before the bids come in?
You could. The reason I put it there is because at this point the bidder will be paying for it.
Right.
I'm trying to backload this.
Clearly, we found there were so many questions about the process itself. It helped that we ran a couple of community forums to get everybody educated on what we were looking to endeavor before the bids came in. Just an idea.
Yeah, this is, no pride in authorship here. I plugged it in there again because I'm trying to backload that cost. We then would prepare and negotiate preliminary concession agreement, preparation and submission of final plans to the Commission, obtain whatever local land use approvals are required and necessary, and then request to the New York State Legislature any amendments to the Right Town Park legislation that are necessary. And I think that's,
So we should find that last bullet out sooner rather than later, what's involved.
Could
I think it depends on what's proposed.
I think the scope of what's going to happen will dictate the extent of the legislation, I think.
Right, so for example, when Seaside Johnny's license agreement was extended, they needed to amend the legislation. When Seaside Johnny's decided it wanted to sell more than just beer and wine, went back and amended the park legislation.
So how quick was that process? Was it our assemblyman and senator just putting it up there and getting a vote in session, or is...
Home rule request, we'd have to submit a home rule request, supporting by, I guess, write down, Paul Noto's in the audience, and then just having our assemblyman and our state senator marshal it through.
I did make a couple of copies of this article, Operating State Parks through Public-Private Partnerships. It's terrific. Yeah. I can email it to you in a PDF, but here's a couple.
Thank you.
And we're here to answer any questions you might have.
We took out this thing.
You keep one.
To the extent
Yeah, if you could email that article.
The article and the PowerPoint as well.
Yeah, and the PowerPoint. Well, first and foremost, I can't thank Christina Bicher, Dan Tartaglia, Christina Collins for all the hard work. I have to say, I think it's an absolutely spectacular presentation. I can't thank you for all your hard work. That's clearly reflected in the presentation you made today and your suggestions. So I know you all spent a lot of time. So I can't thank each of you for your participation, your help with this.
Thank you.
Well, let me open up for questions. I guess the real question, so I'm just trying to think through what kinds of decisions we need to make and thinking through next steps, but let me open it up for questions.
Yeah, I would just say, this is the model that we've put in since I've been on the commission, getting the citizens involved across our jurisdictions. So you see that the people that are on this committee represent all of our different jurisdictions, people well-talented, professionally done. This is filling the gaps where the government really can't do it. So it's tremendous work. I think we're leaps and bounds ahead of where we were, a short time ago. And I think I have confidence that we'll do it the right way for the long term. I noticed you didn't really put in the estimated cost of rehabilitating the building. Correct? That our estimate's about 3.2. Just because I don't think people have a sense of the inside of it. They may look at this RFP and think, okay, I'm going to bid on it, but that you really need to see the inside or give some estimate of what that's going to entail.
The site visit, we didn't want to make it mandatory, but we emphasized in the RFP that you really should come look at everything with us at the site visit. And we're going to encourage that for whoever expresses an interest. And we thought, let them make their own decisions. One of the things we actually did have some cost numbers in there, and we started talking about this and that, and then we thought to ourselves, are we really climbing out on a limb here?
Right.
Are we making representations that we really don't know the answers to? Is this going to come back and haunt us later on? Are they going to come back and say, wait a minute, you said, so we did think about that and tried to stay away from it consciously.
And then also, you didn't put in the roof work that was done, right? I think that it should be in there, don't you think, to say we've already invested in a new roof, and so that is now protected and it's done the right way. And
okay.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Dan was saying in response to your question. The whole principle being flexibility, because we talked a lot about zoning, taxation, possible uses, capital structures, right? And everything would really depend on what comes before us. And so we found it very difficult to be too specific in this proposal until we knew what was on the table, and then you have something very real to respond to.
Exactly.
And how can we really estimate the costs if one person will finish off into 4 small spaces, or someone else will make one large space, and someone will expand, and someone will...
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right approach. I think that we really don't know what's out there. And, it could be... Well, look, let's take a look at the playland. Sustainable playland didn't exist when the process started. And I think I liked, again, the presentation was terrific. I like the approach, and you're looking to have the creativity of the private sector. So for me, sustainable playland is pure governmental genius. Here you had Doug McKean, who sat on this commission, in your seat, Laura, who did his master's thesis on precisely sustainable playland. This is the gentleman that did, Grand Central, very accomplished. Dan Biederman, who privatized, Bryant Park, and just some real, thoughtful people came together and put together what I think is an absolutely spectacular. It didn't exist before. So I think we don't have any idea what could be coming forth from the public, so I love that approach you've taken.
Yeah, and also I would just say regarding Dan Biederman, I don't think anyone really envisioned what could become of Bryant Park, right? And so that was out of the genius of his head, and I would welcome anyone to, offer their thoughts on it.
Laura?
I just want to thank the Commission, and I want to thank you for your hard work on this. Clearly, a lot of thought and a lot of preparation went into this report, and I particularly, given the fact that I live about 4 or 5 blocks from the park, I really want to thank you for being sensitive to the community needs as you develop this and making sure that that was something that you want to be considered as part of the RFP process. And I also think that the Commission put just the right people on this committee so that all factors are considered. And I'm going to sing Christina's praises for a second, because for anybody who's concerned about historic or environmental impacts, Christina has been somebody who has a history of advocating for historic issues and environmental issues in the city of Rye, and I think to the extent people have concerns about those issues and whether or not they're going to be ignored with a public-private partnership potentially being considered in these buildings, I think we've got the right person chairing this commission, or this RFP committee. So thank you really for your hard work. Thank you, Dan, because I've heard that your input on this has been terrific. So and all the members of the committee, I think, have probably contributed tremendously to what I think is a very careful and very well thought out RFP process.
I want to echo that. I think we can take kudos up here for selecting such a good committee and having such good talent. So we're only as good as the people and the committee. And the thing that I like so much about this RFQ is the flexibility, because I think when we started down this road, we were talking about the rehabilitation of the building. That's where it started. But this is so much broader. It's talking about the park overall, and it can be done in segments. One of the things that I've sat up here and I've always said, as the county is looking at Rye Playland, that there could be synergy here. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with Rye Playland. We know that it's out there. And one of my concerns here, and I will say it my final day being on this commission, is there's a lot of politics with a capital P involved in Rye Playland. And we know there's fighting between, or I should say, tension, possibly between the county executive office and also the Board of Legislators. I don't want that to happen here, and I think that the committee should stay as involved up until really almost going through the bids, opening up the bids, and really being the gatekeeper of this process. I understand that we are the elected officials and we're the ones who serve, but I think by keeping the politics out of it, not that there are politics up here, but let's face it, we are elected officials who serve up here, I think that would be very, very good. I also want to thank you for bringing to our attention the budget that's needed, because there will be costs associated. And who is going to pay those, how they're budgeted for. We're talking about a park. We have the City of Rye involved. We have the Ryetown Parks Commission involved. As we go down our budget this evening, we have to think about that. And also, this commission is going to be involved in SECA, right? And this is not usually, we're familiar as some of us, but it's usually not a process that the Ryetown Parks Commission is really engaged in. And so we really do need those professionals who will be guiding the commission as that process, and the costs associated with it, which are usually paid for by the applicant, but there will be some that cannot be paid for by the applicant, as we know only too well. So I think we have to talk about budget. We have to talk about the gatekeeper role of the committee, because I think that's really essential. And also, I think it's really important, the public outreach is critical here, and having a group that is in the business and is a not-for-profit, and it therefore doesn't have a direct stake, but is a purist, is really important here. So this are my preliminary thoughts.
Mayor Feinstein and I are both liaisons to the committee, and I got to tell you, this is a very well done document. It's high quality, and kudos to everyone who worked on it. I agree with Mayor Feinstein as well that the third-party planner is going to be an integral piece to this function of the RFP and RFQ. I think we need to make that decision sooner rather than later. The budget for this process has to be committed by the commission, and I totally agree that the managing of the bids, moving forward, should rest and stay with the committee as a non-political, if you will, committee. They've actually represented in how they put this RFP and RFQ together that it's a holistic approach, and I commend them for that. The liaisons will act as the go-between to the commission.
Well, liaisons have to change.
Well, actually, do they have?
I'm globally.
Well, I don't know.
Speaking globally. And I think the timeline is not aggressive. I think the timeline is workable. And as we know, as processes go, if we need to tweak that, we will.
Well, I love. Sorry, please.
No, I know that the document is online on the website. It is a draft document. We have always solicited, the committee has solicited questions or comments to make it, as, let's say, complete prior to going to become a public document for bid. So maybe between now and the next meeting, we should gear ourselves up in terms of see if there's any public questions from the public. If we have to modify the document, we'll do that, or we'll ask the committee to do that. And let's shoot for the stars and start the process. But we do need to make some commitment as far as budget goes, and I think the recommendation of a third-party planner is exceedingly important.
Do we have what does the third-party planner generally cost? Do we have any idea?
I've had preliminary conversations with Meg. First of all, I invite you all to look at PPS's website, and you will come away with a complete understanding of the kind of stuff that they do and be very impressed, I'm sure. The particular planner that I've worked with in that organization before, her name is Meg Walker. She's a terrific lady. She is also the planner, I believe, used to be or still is the planner of it's either the village of Hastings or the village of Irvington, I'm not sure which. So she's a part-time planner, municipal planner, and then she works for PPS. So I spoke with Meg, and I know that I can get a proposal from them, which I'll be happy to submit, obviously. So if you'd like me to, I will do that. I will invite her.
Definitely that. But do you have any idea, any sense of what planners ballpark they charge?
They usually charge. They're probably going to want to charge on an hourly basis because they're not going to really know how much we want to utilize them. That's part of the reason why, the way I broke it down, again, I tried to, in response to Mayor French's comment, I tried to backload some of the stuff they're going to do, although I do agree with you, if we wait too long to engage the public, my experience with public debate, the first thing people attack is the idea.
Right.
And if the idea is a terrific idea, well, they'll leave that alone. The next thing they'll attack is the process.
Right.
And if you can defend the process, what comes last. They start attacking the personalities. Everything becomes ad hominem attacks. So if we can diffuse that up front by saying, hey guys, we have, this is not internal. We've gone out, we've got external planners here, and this is what they do. They activate and they public spaces. They've done work on Bryant Park. For example, one of the interesting things she told me is that they worked on Bryant Park as well. And when they first sat down with the city, they said to the city, we want, and if you've been to Bryant Park in a while, you realize that none of the chairs and tables are screwed to the ground. So they said, we want people to be able to move the chairs and tables because people are gregarious. People don't want to sit in benches that all face in one direction. They want to face each other. They may be in a group of 3, they may be in a group of 6. The Parks Department says, you're crazy. They're all going to get stolen. Well, guess what? They're all still there. They're all movable. And when you go to Bryant Park, you can sit down, you can get your lunch, and you can pull chairs and tables together, and you can sit in a group of 6 or 8 or 10. And the chairs and tables haven't disappeared. So, the next thing they did is they came in and they said, look, this is a dangerous park. Okay, it's dangerous because there's no visibility. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to remove all of the low branches of all of the trees so that there's see-through. So now if you're on, I think it's either 46th and 47th, depending on what street you're on, you can look straight through the park. That wasn't possible before. So they have a lot of experience. They've gone into urban areas in Detroit, and they've activated areas in Detroit. And, I was working with them in connection with a project in Yonkers, and that's what they were trying to help us do. They were trying to protect waterfront and make sure that it stayed accessible, because we were proposing, the company I was working for was proposing a large waterfront development, and of course the outcry was, it's our river. It was closed off before because it was a contaminated industrial site. Now you're cleaning it up, and you're going to build these tall buildings, and you're still going to keep us out. We're the neighborhood. Why are you trying to keep us out? And those were the stakeholders, and they came in and they met with all of these organizations, and they convinced us, this isn't what you want to do. You want to have corridors, viewscape corridors. You want to get people down to the river, and not just down to the river behind a fence, but maybe be able to touch the water. The public only has about this much access to Long Island Sound, to the water and to the beach, and this is one of the only places, if you don't belong to a private club or live in an expensive enclave, where you actually can get access to the beach. So public access is paramount to them. And, I think that will come across when they meet with the public and they start to have this process of public information. So I will do that. I'll get a proposal from them.
The important thing also, as I see it, is that once we decide on the third-party planner, that planning consultant will be publicly told, so that the bidders will know that this is who we selected.
Right.
So the upfront cost, if you will, we can, backload it, like Dan said, because that's the right way I think we would look at it, so that our initial cost will be to break the ice, if you will, to get these bidders to understand the project from their perspective, and we'll have it consistent. He'll be consistent, or the firm will be consistent with the commission to guide us as well. So we won't be going into having one planner today, and then tomorrow they'll come up with another planner. We need to make that decision early in the game so that they know up front who we're dealing with.
I just kind of add one more comment on this to Mayor French's question of the timing. One of the great strengths of the Commission has been its openness to the public and the community conversations that you've been holding regularly. So there's nothing to say that separately or prior to any of the steps in this process, we can't have this go before the public. And it's really just a question of, well, what do we know at this point? At this point, we have guiding principles and we have a process. We don't have a lot of tangible plans to consider, so it might be hard to get into a level of specificity with people, but certainly openness and responsiveness to the community are the top of our list, and so I think that can be incorporated on a more ad hoc basis, or in addition to the use of a planning firm as well, if that's what you decide.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I just know that land use change is the third rail in local government. And we don't have to put the exact hours. I just didn't walk away from the RFP saying there's a lot of work to be done here. You don't get that from the pictures, and maybe it's just a couple of words to say there's a substantial amount of renovation needed. Because when you go in the building, it's a totally different experience than I think is what reflected here.
Well, so I guess there's a couple of things. I think that sounds like I certainly agree with the view that we should retain your services if at the right time capital committee is agreeable to continue to work on this. I think you've provided an invaluable service, and I'd like to see you continue working on this project as has been suggested. So I think that's that for me. If there's, it sounds like that both our liaison
I'm trying to remember.
Recommending that continue, and I certainly would support that recommendation.
Refresh my recollection. When we did the resolution appointing the committee, we changed the date, the end date of. And is it go to?
It was June.
I think it's June, because we did this so long ago. We should look at that again and make sure for the next meeting,
right,
Bishop, that resolution, and I should have gone back to it, make sure that this committee at least can go through the end of the year.
Now, so I think that's absolutely correct. So that's first thing. Second thing, I'm very happy for both our liaisons to stay and continue as liaisons. Now, Mayor Feinstein, if you can, I'm certainly happy for you to have stay as a liaison. If Mayor Rosenberg and Mayor Brook are happy with that, that certainly works, at least from my standpoint.
Well, do I become a liaison, or do I become a member? Do I need to become a member of the committee, and then you have a liaison who's an elected, who's an official member? Whatever you want to do.
That's actually one. Yeah, then maybe that's. Well, if you're happy to stay involved, I'd like for you to stay involved.
I would like to.
So we can make you certainly. So we'll figure out legally for next month.
Fine.
But if you could, you stay involved. I'd very much like to have you stay involved.
Thank you very much for your vote of confidence. I'd like to do that.
So I echo that. Mayor Feinstein can stay on as a committee member, and then we just have one liaison. I mean, most committees I've been on, we have one liaison.
I think Doug would be great.
Well, I saw my name floated out. My name was floated out. That's why I'm saying, hey, let's just.
Well, we'll figure out whether they need another. We can. But the other thing I wanted to say.
Appointment don't show up.
I love your time. I love your timetable. We're going to have that at the right town. Mr. Noto, I see your hand coming up. Please. It's our town attorney, Paul Noto. As long as it's a positive comment, Sergeant.
Well, it's sort of positive. I just want to remind the Commission, apropos of Dan's presentation, which was excellent. You are a municipal body, and we have a procurement process. So before we select a planning consultant, I would suggest that we put out an RFP. There are many planning firms, F.P. Clark.
Wow, right here. What I was going to.
Many of them, PPS. One of them.
Thank you for reminding us, but I was actually headed in that direction.
Yeah, and then you would meet with them. Actually, I think.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Because I think an interesting. So wow, I mean.
Pick someone that would be comfortable with. You don't have to put it out to bid. It is professional service.
But Noto and Carvin are essentially interchangeable.
I just wanted to make sure before. Well, I know you, and I know sometimes.
But anyway, no. But I think that's important, and I think, look, if we're going to, as you said, they'll attack the process, and the process very clearly has to be along the lines. And in addition to that, what I like to see is the PPS type firm, make a presentation on how they see the process and how they would involve the public.
Right, I think we would invite a number of different firms to do that, because I think some of them have
I think they should make, because I think they should make a presentation to the board, or if you remember in our town dissolution process, we had 5 different firms bid to advise the town on the dissolution process. 5 very good, and what was interesting, we had 10 people on the steering committee, and it was uniform in terms of the ranking of the presentation. So I think it'll give us a chance to really get a sense of this really all-important player in this process to put out an RFP and hear from it.
I think this is also a very labor-intensive process from beginning to end, and I'm not sure Bishop's going to be able to do it all by himself. So the planning firm would probably be appropriate, and have the personnel who, some of these firms do traffic studies. They have all kinds of different analysis they can provide in-house.
My only question really is, I'm fully agreement. I think the board sounds like it's nodding in agreement. The only question I have is, so how do we put together the RFP, and how long does it take? How much time do we need to give? I
would take what the committee prepared and put it into a PDF, and I would send it to maybe a half dozen firms, or put out and say, this is what the commission would like to do. We'd like to solicit input from planning firms to go through the process.
Can we allow the committee to vet that process for the commission?
Sure.
We could. I mean, we could have them narrow it down to 3, let's say, and then you'd interview the top 3. I mean, I wouldn't turn it over to a committee. I would just say they could vet. You might get 10 proposals, and maybe they come back with the top 3 for the commission interview, something like that.
And I'm viewing the committee with the liaison's involvement as well.
Right.
As long as
the committee wants to do that.
Right. As long as you're involved in the opening of the bids and all those whole process, I'm fine having.
Well, what I was thinking, though, I'd like to see the 3 finalists come present to the board.
Yeah.
And we don't need 10 finalists to come to the board, but
I think
that's a wonderful suggestion.
That's what I was suggesting.
That the committee vet the proposals, and then they bring forward the 3 top proposals to be presented.
I'm not sure they would come to a public meeting and do it necessarily.
I wouldn't say the top 3, because sometimes you may only, I dealt with this in a different situation, you may have 10, but you may not have a top 3, because there may be only 1 or 2 that are even viable.
Right. No more than 3, I would say.
No more than 3, exactly.
Any more than 3 would be fine.
And would we have them present to the board?
I don't think, I wouldn't want to put someone in a position where they are essentially applying for a job and then to be publicly rejected. That's not something where you have to meet with them in public. It's up to you. It's entirely up to you.
May I make a suggestion? Sometimes you want to do it, we want transparency, but sometimes you ask certain questions in a private setting, and then in fact,
Right.
You then open it up to the public. But there may be things that come out that you ask privately that you might be a little bit more hesitant.
In terms of how they bill and
Exactly.
you can do both, by the way. You could have a private meeting and then come into the public session.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know what you're the lawyer here, but I know I would like to see the finalists, however many there are, and I'd like to be able to sit down and have a conversation with them. Now, if you tell me we can do that.
Well, it's a contract. Essentially, it's a job interview. It's a contract negotiation. So you can have an executive session on part of it and discuss it, and you can also invite them to come into a public session and make a presentation. That's up to the commission. But I think the first thing we would do is take the document, send it out to some firms, or send it up to the Planning Federation, whatever, to say, please, tell your members, give them a deadline. You have a nice timetable here, and say, we'd like to get you on board. And I think you need to get a sense of what the costs will be, because I don't think we do yet.
I make a recommendation that I think that maybe again, if the committee's happy to incorporate into your timeline a part of an RFP process for that kind of firm, and when would you need to hear from them before you can put a budget together anyway?
It'd be hard to.
Right, so you need to hear from them before you can finalize the budget in any case. So I think that, so if you guys just can incorporate into your time frame. So I think the consensus view is we'd love to have you continue to stay involved. We'd like to keep our liaisons. We've wonderful results so far. Like to keep the momentum going. I love your time frame. You can incorporate into your time frame an RFP for the planning firm, and then a budget to present it to the board and approve. And I think
talk yourself into a job.
That's what?
So they talk themselves into a job.
Exactly.
Thank you.
What we're going to do, Joe, is we're going to have a special meeting of the commission as a whole.
Yeah, that's actually quite a good idea.
On a
So
Saturday or whatever, and
you give us a
notice that, of course.
Right. You don't have to limit yourself to the next Tuesday meeting on April 16th.
Right.
If you want to just pull us together in 2 or 3 weeks' time, whenever you think it makes sense, we can do that. So, or in 6 weeks' time.
Do you want, is the commission, or is Mr. Nowotnik, or is Mr. Noto going to distribute this to planning consulting firms, or would you like us to?
If you can do it, I'd love to have you do that.
I mean, I know.
Bishop should be the point man, honestly. He's a paid employee.
Well, if you also want to distribute to different plans, we just went out with a comprehensive plan in Rybrook, and we did baseline studies with the county, and the county was very helpful, giving us, lists of where to send to and the like.
Well, yeah,
the federation, the planners, etc. What are you talking about? We're talking about this RFP, or
We're talking about
the plan
proposals to act as outside planning consultants.
yeah,
I
but
believe.
that would.
That should come from Bishop. It should come from the town.
Yeah. But the committee can formulate the document so that just a matter of putting the town of Fry's Wrighttown Park Commission's logo on it.
Mm-hmm.
He'll send it out. He'll be the clearinghouse, if you will, for the document, but it should be put together by the
I'll
committee.
accept as many recommendations as you
Right.
have.
Yeah, there's a dozen or so.
as a technical formality, it'll come from Bishop's desk. But effectively, the more work you guys can do, the more appreciative we will be. So I think that with any people you recommend, they will get the document.
Okay.
And any suggestions we have will be added to that. And if you could put together the RFP, that would be even more welcome.
But my only thing is, we can get lists together of where, obviously, the RFP goes out. There's certain people that you send it to. That we can provide.
Yeah, I think if any assistance you can give Mayor Feinstein, you can give Mayor French. I think we're looking for the widest distribution possible.
Yeah.
So any Bishop, you make sure you contact Mr. Bradbury, Mr. Pickup for support. Then
I mean, there's a dozen or so.
City planner.
Yeah, there's a dozen or so regional planners that
Great.
I've worked with most of them, and they're all very, very good. And
Great.
You know, I don't.
If there's a template, if any other municipality has done a similar RFP and there's some language we can borrow from it, that's all the better.
I can give you, it's not similar. I mean, we did an RFP for our comprehensive plan, but that's a really...
I love that we're doing an RFP for the RFP, by the way.
That's exciting. RFP
I
squared.
think Portchester did it for the hospital.
Yeah.
They used Cleary Consulting. They may have gone out for planning consulting. Portchester did.
Portchester, okay.
Okay.
Great,
We'll
thank
find some sources.
Okay, thank you.
Great job.
Yep, thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks again. Okay, good. When you have that new timeline, if you just send it to us as well, and if you need a ad hoc meeting, don't hesitate. We'll get that called. All right, perfect, great. Thank you so much. Well, that was really helpful, really impressive. I feel good about being on this commission, Mayor Feinstein. Thank you so much, our liaison, Southern Shore liaison Feinstein. Okay, now we're on a tight schedule tonight. 7:23.
Yeah.
Can you give us a FEMA update, Mr. Nowotnik?
Well, the FEMA report is essentially the same report that you... What happened to our farm?
You don't. He said keep going. He's in the minute. All right. You want to come back to this? You want to, does he need to be here for
There's no
this?
vote here. All of a sudden I looked up and there's no quorum.
No.
All right. Essentially, the report is the same as last meeting. The only thing that's changed here at this particular point is we have completed one of the project worksheets, which is for debris removal. If you look on the second page, you'll see that FEMA has qualified us for $31,100.93. And then I show you the schedule of how those payments would lay out. The commission would have to eat, at the moment anyway, $3,887.61.
One question.
All of the rest are still estimates that you see in that chart.
Okay.
And we are frustrated by this because our insurance people have come in and inspected the buildings. They have not yet produced a report for us. FEMA has had 2 physical walkthroughs through the beach facility. They have not given us any indication of specifically what project worksheets would be qualified for. The City of Rye has taken over the seawall project because we own that kind of jointly, and that's integrated with the street repairs. And we have not been able to get much information there. The City of Rye is also being stonewalled by FEMA to some degree. So there is a...
Who's our congressional representative?
I spoke to Nita Lowy's office just today, as a matter of fact, and I am emailing her this report because they've actually volunteered to see if they can help push things along.
Good. Actually,
But the whole FEMA thing is a reimbursement, so you have to spend the money. We can't wait for FEMA. If work has to be done, it needs to be done, regardless of what...
Right, but for example, in a couple of cases, because we have now had 2 hurricanes in about a year's time, and probably, let's see, I can't remember the last one where FEMA was involved. FEMA has taken a position that they want to evaluate all projects for what they call additional mitigation measures that are possible, and they are willing to fund additional mitigation measures. What they are trying to do is look at places that are suffering continuously from hurricane damage, et cetera, and saying we don't want to continue to fund the same repair over and over again. What we would like to do is evaluate how can you make that damage, perhaps repair it either stronger, better, higher, taller, thicker, whatever, and they're willing to pay for that up specification.
It's the repetitive loss program, basically. They don't want repetitive losses. They're tired of spending money, but they're also talking about permanent structures that don't meet the FEMA regulations. For example, Seaside Johnny's. It's a building, and it may not meet the FEMA regulations. So damages to a structure that are outside of the current, let's say, FEMA regs, may not be reimbursed once we make the repairs.
Correct. That's correct.
But so who?
They're more or less indicating this may be the last time for certain projects.
But is there anything that's not been done repair-wise that needs to be done prior to beach opening?
Yeah, we must redo the beach walk. The beach walk suffered significant damage there. That has to be done. Last time we did a minor little thing, it was $4,100. I'm figuring this is going to be about $12,000 or $13,000 this time around. We need to completely resculpt the beach. The sand displacement this time was much worse than anybody's ever seen. Seaside Johnny's is working on the beach snack bar. The beach snack bar was totally inundated. They are planning on being open for Memorial Day and maybe sooner.
So basically what you're saying, I think, is we're spending money out of our budget to make repairs as necessary, regardless of whether reimbursement will be...
Right, we are preparing to spend money.
Well, I mean, obviously,
in some cases, like... Right, in some cases we've already spent money that you know, we may or may not be reimbursed.
Right. So basically, fast forward.
Right.
If we don't get reimbursed, there's going to be a negative impact to the current budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And also, if you look,
But if we don't make these changes, we may not get reimbursed in the future.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right. I mean, we did the tough medicine in the city of Rye. People were replacing their electrical boxes below the floodplain. Hey, I had to replace my box, 4 times in the last 5 years. Well, you can't do that. You have to raise it, put it above, and the tough medicine, I think we need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we have those tunnels. Those tunnels sustain a tremendous amount of damage. Were we planning on opening up the tunnels?
We're planning on opening up the tunnels, yes.
Right.
We're planning on having the beach pretty much the way people remember it last year. The only, what I would call serious problem that I don't see us getting to or getting repaired is the roof of the bathroom building. We are estimating, if I remember correctly, $320,000. Okay, out of that 320, we're thinking almost 300,000 of it belongs in that building. The deterioration there was there prior to the storm, but the storm made it about 5 times worse because many of the tiles were already loose and those kinds of things, so they blew tiles over and so forth. We're thinking insurance is going to give us a healthy kick there, but I would think the commission is going to be asked to fork over $100,000 or $150,000 if we want to redo that roof. I don't know how much insurance is going to cover, and I don't know how much FEMA is going to provide.
Which roof?
This is the bathroom building, the main bathroom building.
But the building will be open.
Yeah, the building will be open. We will patch whatever we need to patch, and we can patch it, but that's what has been done with that roof since 1925.
It only leaks when it rains.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. My only request is that, again, it's a major capital expense that will hit the city of Rye.
Yep.
We have a capital planning program which starts in July and August where we look at all of our needs, that you get it in front of our city planner who does our capital budget so that the city of Rye is going through saying, all right, it's $150,000, we've got 39.2% of that. If we've got to come up with those funds in this budget cycle, we need to look at that.
Well, again, what we're trying to do is we're waiting for the insurance report because that is going to be kind of our starting point in terms of where we go from
Just
there.
keep the July,
Now,
August.
I also included, we went out and we solicited bids for flood insurance. One of the things you should be aware of, we're in what they call an A flood zone, being right smack on the water.
You're a V zone. V zone.
No, I think it's
You're okay.
AE is what it's called.
We keep redrawing the maps too, right?
But in any event, for example, Seaside Johnny's, the flooding in Seaside Johnny's, there was no foundation damage that we could ascertain. All of the inside renovations belonged to the licensee. He was covered by insurance, so the repairs that he's making to the snack bar are being paid for by his insurance company and or his deductible, etc. However, if the commission wishes, there is an opportunity here, and you can see that the premiums get somewhat dicey depending on how you set your deductible. We just wanted to at least give it to the commission to say, here's a situation where you have the administration building, because remember, that's the tunnels and the basement, which are beach level, and the beach level snack bar, which are prone to flooding. And if FEMA is going to be reticent in the future in terms of funding any damage, then the possibility here is the commission may want to consider flood insurance. This is not a decision you have to make right away. This is just information we wanted to make sure you had, because it does have significant financial impacts. This is not in the budget presentation.
So this is on top of the insurance we have right now.
This is on top of the insurance we have now. That's correct.
It's going to go higher, though, if we don't.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, again, your experience rated, and as you file, all of a sudden the premiums...
And